And so here we are, ready to go through episode 3 with you and discuss what agility actually means in terms of the PA life. In other words, what does being agile directly mean to a PA? Obviously, there are far more questions that need to be addressed. And again, we go to international trainers for their expertise and to hear what they have to say. This time, our South African PAs, Liesel Korb, Elriske Grobelaar, and Carol L. Martins interview, respectively, Peggy Vasquez from the US, Ayana Castro from the US, and Heather Baker Thompson from the UK. The questions that Liesel Korb set to Peggy are basically the following. What does agile thinking mean? Does it become an imperative? And for us who work in business, in the private or the public sector, does Peggy believe that in our workplaces as EAs, this topic has actually hit home and across all industries? And how does Peggy see agile work? Thirdly, is agile work actually advantageous today? What are her thoughts on this? For instance, if you still have a job, but would you rather direct your course of action towards a marketing direction or in HR or accounting? Does this limit the EA in her growth itself? And how do we build relationships and networks in this agile work? This is a key question as more and more we are driven towards screens, whether our mobiles or our computers or even our TVs. We are basically a screen-focused generation at the moment in terms of workplace participants. So how does one build face-to-face relationships, or are our relationships going to be social media relationships? And for PA specifically, whether working from a mobile office or a physical office, what does it mean? I mean, these are serious questions for us. Let's listen to the video.
Hello, my fellow peers. I'm Liesel Korb, and I'm a finalist in South Africa's PA of the Year Award. I invited Peggy to join me in this project, Peggy Vasquez, and I'm very excited to share my views, and she's going to answer some of my questions with you. Let me introduce you to Peggy. I'm so grateful that you joined us. Peggy is an author and a motivational speaker, and I take some of her personal words from a book saying that her passion is to empower others to succeed by providing keynotes and workshops to audiences around the world. Wow, Peggy. She began her career as a receptionist and worked her way up to a chief executive assistant, only to realize her dreams as an international speaker and best-selling author and an empowerment coach. Peggy has a list of stunning accolades and some 2 fabulous books, of which I've read 2 chapters on the one, Not Just an Admin, What an Eye-Opener, and Mean Girl No More, that have assisted many an ardent seeker of growth in the workplace. I'm very honored to have you as an assistant in this project. Let's kick it off. Agile thinking has become a very imperative and a hot topic of late. And for us who work in the business or even in the public sector, do you believe that in an EA's workplace, in the EA industry, that this topic has seriously hit home across the world?
Absolutely. One of the things I think about when I think of an EA, an assistant at any level, is we are the most agile and flexible, adaptable people on the planet. It's part of our DNA. It's part of what we do day in and day out. So staying agile, staying flexible. Being agile means the ability to shift consciously to the exact situation you're in.
Yes.
To shift. Instead of saying, this is how I do my business, and being so rigid that you can't flex to the current situation.
And things are always changing. The only constant we do have is change.
Absolutely.
Mm. Right, Peggy, with us coming from very much an old millennium or an old culture moving into this new culture, when we apply for a new position, how does a PA today prepare to answer to the new mindset of these companies who are not necessarily looking for the old skill set? How do we apply ourselves in preparation for this?
Intentionally. So often I see an assistant that applies for a position because it's available.
Yeah.
And they use their old resume and they just send it in.
Mm.
But you've got to do more work than that.
Absolutely.
Because you want to make sure by the time you get hired that you want to be there. So
Yes.
first you do your research on the organization that's hiring to find out if that's a place where you would fit. It's a place where you would feel that you respect the organization and their mission, their vision, what they're doing. Once you know that all of that is true, then you look for the key words in the job description, in the position that's being posted. You look for the keywords in that, and then you look at your resume and you modify it to match those keywords, because you want to make sure that your skills are matching what it is they're looking for. And then when you're interviewing, you have the same mindset. So often I see assistants that when they're being interviewed, they think they need to provide the right answer.
Yeah.
And yet employers are looking for your answer. They want to know your truth because they're trying to see you. They're trying to discover you to find out if you're truly a good fit for their organization. It's not, interviewing is not about being perfect. It's about saying, yes, I've made a mistake and here's how I recovered from it. Here's what I put into place to make sure I never made that mistake before. And then one of the best tips I can give you is the strategy is to provide 5 selling points during your interview. And to do that, again, you need to research the organization, understand what the position is that's being posted. Do your research on that. Go back through your career and say, what have I done to demonstrate these things?
Yes.
Have those 5 selling points on a piece of paper in front of you. Have your resume in front of you. There's nothing wrong with that. When we're at work, we have things in front of us.
True.
So you're demonstrating that you prepared for the interview.
Right. Peggy, in your opinion, how does a modern EA market herself in the new era? What would you say are the great strategies, except being just agile, to really put yourself out there as, look, yes, I've got the skill. I have come from an old background and a mindset, but how am I going to repackage myself for this new market?
I think one of the best ways to do that is to demonstrate resilience, self-leadership. Those are huge. Now, learning that on your own doesn't mean that you didn't consult with a coworker, a mentor, or a coach, or that you searched it on Google and you did a whole, try and fail and learn, repeat approach. The number one way to prepare for the future is to continue learning and improving your skill set. If you think that you know it all, that you've learned it all because you're a senior EA, you're going to block opportunities for you. Never stop learning. Knowledge is the way to handle change. It's the way to not fear change because you're learning along the way. So to prepare technically, you need to keep your eyes and your ears open about what's coming down the pike. What are the new software releases? What are the new types of technology that are being required? We had to learn overnight all of these platforms: Zoom, YouTube, Teams, WebEx. I mean, there's a long list.
That was the speed of light.
Yes. And you had to learn it overnight, and yet you weren't trained on it.
No.
And then you were expected to become the guru, and then to teach others how to use it. That's staying abreast of technology. You also need to focus on your high performance skills, which are your soft skills. You need to take that next level by adopting them as a mindset. Instead of just learning some new skill set and leaving it on the bookshelf, you need to actually make it a part of you, a part of what you're doing personally, professionally, that you've adopted it. I think that is everything. when you think back about all the books you've read, all the conferences you've attended, the different speeches that you've listened to, can you imagine if you would have taken the time to adopt them and have it become part of your mindset? How much further ahead that you would be?
How do you see an agile agile PA or EA work with an agile executive in this new post-COVID world of work? We no longer live in a physical world, and neither do we live in a digital world. We've now got like a comparative hand-to-hand digital world, a hybrid of physical and digital connection of communication. How do you see this on the way forward?
When I think about supporting an executive in a post-COVID world, what has changed is the time and the distance between us. So when you have time and distance between you, what you need to focus on even more is communication. You need to think of over communicating and finding a way to do that based on your executive's preferences. If you're the one who's constantly pinging your executive through either IM or Teams or emails, or constantly requesting a video meeting, that executive may not like that. Managing up is key. It's absolutely imperative.
Yes.
Because you can't move into that strategic business partner without knowing who they are. And when I say knowing who they are, I'm talking about their personality, their preferences, their pet peeves. What are their aspirations? What are their pain points? What are their challenges? And then the next thing that you need to find out is what really matters the most to them. What are their priorities? And a great way to do that is by becoming a keen observer of your executive. What do they seem to be focused upon? When you're in a virtual meeting with them, what is at the top of the agenda? What is it that they routinely state? What creates the frustration point? And then the next step is to ask your executive for a copy of their goals. When I'm providing a presentation and I ask assistants if they have a copy of their executive's goals, few, if any, hands go up.
Peggy, what are your thoughts on this? To adopt a skill in a definitive direction, for instance, you still have your PA job, but would you rather direct your course of action towards a marketing direction, an HR direction, or an accounting direction? Or do you think that limits the EA in her growth itself? What are your thoughts on that?
I have a lot of thoughts on that. And I think I really do, because I've had many coaching sessions on this topic. I think that it would be best answered in a mentoring, in a coaching discussion. But in general, I would say that one of the things that most assistants love about their job is the diversity.
Natural next step.
Advancement. And then when I ask, have you talked to an executive assistant about what their world looks like? No. So I think before you start to pursue any type of definitive path, I think it's really important for you to first figure out why you want to. Now, if it naturally aligns with your skill set and you're being pulled into that direction, go for it. But again, it goes back to doing the research to figure out, why do I want this? What would it look like? Am I opening more doors, or am I pigeonholing myself? What would provide, if I look to the future, what's going to provide me the longevity and the opportunities that I desire?
Okay, Peggy, how do we build important relationship and networks in this new world of work?
It starts with intention. You don't build relationships overnight.
No, you don't.
It takes time. It takes time. And you have to have that intention that you want to build a network with who and why, and what are you willing to give to that relationship, and what are you hoping to get?
Yes.
And understanding that once you build a new connection, once you start that new relationship, invest the time to nurture it.
Maintenance.
Maintenance as well, but to nurture it, for it to actually become a friendship, a great partnership, whatever it may be. one of the things that happened to me just today, I have to share this with you. So I worked with this executive for 8 years, and we were the natural match where you didn't have to spend a lot of time to create the trust, the respect. We understood each other really well. Our personalities definitely matched, and he was open. And so I learned a ton from him. He valued the role of an executive assistant. And so it was just one of my favorite partnerships with a manager. So he retired 7 years ago today. And the memory came up on my social media account. And I read what I wrote that day, and I copied it and I sent it to him via text. And oh my goodness, he said, I completely forgot that this was the day that I had retired. And it was like this sparking this great memory for him. The reason why I share that with you is there was time, effort, and intention into moving that relationship into a friendship. We haven't worked together in 12 years.
Wow.
And yet we still text each other.
Yes.
And so I share that story to say that relationships take time and effort and attention. I could have easily just stopped the relationship with him after he retired.
Absolutely. Peggy, this was such an enlightening session. Thank you so much for joining me.
Then Alriska interviews Ayana, and her questions are: what tools or systems can be implemented to enable a business, our workplace as such, to become more agile? Can we be more agile if our workplace isn't agile? And what can executive assistants do to facilitate these changes, to make and promote workplaces to be more agile, to facilitate our communication and productivity? Thirdly, what would be the best way to approach and engage management to embark on this journey? Perhaps management is enlightened, but there are workplaces that haven't quite embraced the full spectrum of agility, and we need new policies and procedures. Not every PA works in large corporates. There are PAs in small companies and who work in rural areas that may face more challenges in becoming agile. Fourthly, what, in your opinion, she asks, would be the biggest challenge for executive assistants during the process of transitioning from being seen as a gatekeeper to actually being an agile facilitator? And then, obviously, importantly, what are the crucial attributes of an agile executive assistant? In other words, you may have a fantastically agile workplace, but the executive assistant herself or himself may not have an agile mindset. Lastly, are there any developed courses or programs that people actually can attend in order to facilitate progress in this environment? Let's listen to the video.
Greetings to my peers worldwide. I am Alriska Grobelaar, and I too was a finalist in South Africa's PA of the Year Award 2021 edition. Like my fellow finalists, I am involved in the project focusing on the important topic of agility in the workplace with regard to the Agile PA working in an agile environment. I invited Ayana Castro to be my partner in this task. Ayana is an international speaker and author with expertise in helping others see their potential and overcoming self-imposed obstacles in pursuit of their goals. As the founder and chief maven of Work Your Package, her mission is to educate, encourage, and equip others to enhance what they already have to become the total package and be extraordinary. Hello, Ayana. It's great to be talking to you, and thank you again for making time for this conversation.
Good to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
So let's jump right in. I will start by asking you, what tools/systems can be implemented to enable a business to become more agile? For example, resources that will assist in managing hybrid or remote work for companies that have not done this in the past.
So one of the processes that you can implement, and it can be done in person or virtually, is having what they call a daily stand-up meeting. And it's typically held in the morning for about 15 minutes, and it allows each team member to provide updates and ask and answer 3 questions. What have they accomplished? What do they plan to do by the next meeting? And what blockers are preventing them or may prevent them? So the first question is, what have they accomplished since the last meeting? And I know you might be thinking, well, if we're doing this every day, didn't we just find out from them yesterday what they're doing? But a lot can happen in a workday. A lot of things can change. There might be other factors that might impact their task. So it's good to ask those questions every day. It also allows team members to provide their accomplishments. The second question is, what do they plan to do before the next meeting, meaning tomorrow? So what tasks do they have on their plate for today? What is the game plan for today? And then the third question, and I believe the most important question, is what blockers may or are preventing you from reaching your goal or completing your task? In an agile environment, it's necessary to make sure that you're constantly assessing the environment and constantly looking for risk and trying to mitigate risk.
Thank you. That's quite insightful and really a good idea. Secondly, I would like to ask you, what can we as executive PAs do to facilitate these changes across our companies through what we do on a daily basis to promote agility?
So often you need to be the change that you want to see. And therefore, PAs need to model the mindset of agility. And agile methodologies include continuous improvement. And that comes from reviewing and assessing lessons learned early and all the time. It can be done by taking a really constructive look at current administrative procedures that you have in place, and analyzing the effectiveness to see whether or not it's worth keeping. So it's that opportunity to look at a procedure and say, if it's no longer working, what can we do to improve it? And along the lines of analyzing it, what lessons learned are you capturing along the way? When you develop those changes and you look at them from a standpoint of not necessarily this doesn't work anymore, but more of a how can we make it better? It allows you to continue to strengthen that mindset of agility, of being in the state of continuous improvement and review. Process change is often the ground level work for PAs, administrative professionals. Like, it's the ground level work because you're closer to the work than anyone else. You see it. Typically, you're in the room when the task comes about, so you know what needs to be done. It is necessary for there to be a solid foundation in order for there to be agility that is welcomed. So if the foundation is shaky, people might not feel very comfortable with being agile and having continuous improvement.
Oh, wow, that is definitely good insight. So that leads me to my next question. What would be the best way to approach and engage management to embark on a journey to change policies and procedures to become more agile?
So change is very rarely welcomed, and it's not always easy. When you complete a SWOT analysis, which stands for strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats, when you complete a SWOT analysis, it outlines what you're currently doing and that place of improvement that I talked about before. It helps everybody get on the same page, but it requires an open dialogue to discuss what's going well as where there's places for improvement. And those discussions allow for more transparency. It allows for more channels of communication because it's not just one person making a decision, it's several people stating how it impacts others.
Great stuff. What, in your opinion, would be the biggest challenges for us as executive assistants during the process of transitioning from gatekeepers to Agile facilitators?
Well, first, I love the phrase Agile facilitators. I love that. The biggest change is mindset. It is your mindset. As a gatekeeper, that primary responsibility is the status quo and maintaining what's already been done, what has been done. But as an Agile facilitator, that responsibility shifts to seeing how all of your tasks and projects are interrelated. There's no such thing as, well, I'm just going to complete my task and that's it. If a project is to be completed, the question should be asked, how will it impact other projects across the organization? So I liken it to a ripple effect. While it might be just a ripple in your department, by the time it gets to someone else's department, is it a tidal wave? So you have to think about how it impacts the entire organization. Being an Agile facilitator requires upward servant leadership, meaning you need to go beyond anticipating what needs to be done. So mindset is the very key to becoming an Agile facilitator instead of a gatekeeper.
Okay, wow. So what in your opinion are the crucial attributes of an Agile assistant?
You always need to be at a state of wanting to improve. So if there's a task, it requires you to be inquisitive beyond the typical of, okay, this is the task, this is what needs to be done, this is the due date, this is who it's for. You need to go to that next stage, which is asking those inquisitive follow-up strategic questions, finding out the why behind the task instead of just doing it because it needs to be done. Researching how that particular task will affect business operations overall. Ask why it's being done. Who will it impact? Not only during the process, but after it's done. What happens if it isn't completed? You know, who's impacted if it's not successful? Sometimes that helps people become more invested in getting something done when they find out what the impact is if it's not done. And being inquisitive about the task and your performance throughout helps you grow. So at the end of the year or mid-year, whenever you're getting your performance evaluation, you're not blindsided by your manager saying, well, I wish you had taken more initiative on this, or it'd be helpful if you did, X. Well, if you're asking those questions throughout, you already know that your manager is expecting you, wants you to, needs you to most of the time, because sometimes they don't even realize it, but they need you to take the lead.
I hear you, Ayana. So what would you add to this question? Are there any developed courses or programs available for EAs to equip themselves to successfully transition and facilitate change going forward?
There are administrative professional organizations that do provide certification programs specifically for project management. I also recommend using two websites that I use often, which is pmtraining.net and projectmanagement.com. Both of them are geared towards project management professionals. I am a certified project management professional, so I use them quite frequently. And while it might appear to be very technical, it is helpful to understand the lexicon and the jargon of the executives that you are working with. Many of them understand project management quite well. And while they might not necessarily be able to articulate it in a way that it makes sense to someone who doesn't work in that field often, it's helpful to know what a charter is, what the elements of a project entails, so that you can actually speak their language. It's great to know what the cycle and the phases of a project is, the initiation, a closeout, like to know all of those different things. It's helpful. They have tons of resources to help, all the way through to having templates. I'm a big fan of having templates. I have templates for almost everything because it helps you stay consistent. Again, when you are able to really document a process and how things are to go and how things should be, you're then able to look at what is working and what is not working. And that's really the heart of that Agile environment, reassessing it every single day, looking at it and seeing whether or not it's working.
Thank you, Ayana. I think I also live by processes and especially templates. I like to streamline on my side as well. Consistency is key. So
Yes.
Yeah, thank you again, Ayana. It's truly been insightful and absolutely a delight talking with you. The world awaiting us is exciting, and it's encouraging for us to talk to as many people as possible to make the road easier for us.
Next, we have Carol Ann Martins interviewing Heather Thompson from the UK. And Carol Ann asks, a focus on whether the future PA remains a gatekeeper or a facilitator. This calls up the notion of servant leadership. How does one regarding the focus of whether the future PA remains a gatekeeper or a facilitator. Let's look at this. The notion of servant leadership is usually embraced as one of the ingredients of success in the shift to being more agile, and this mindset is expected of everyone. However, we also know that some of the best executive systems are known to adopting a no-nonsense approach. What, in your view, Carolyn asks, how do we strike a balance of these potential opposing styles? Secondly, she asks, one of the intended outcomes that is being driven as part of our adoption of the scaled agile framework is that wherever possible, decision-making be decentralized so as not to become a blocker in the process. It would therefore follow that when decisions are expected from senior leaders, it is imperative that these decisions are made quickly and effectively. Otherwise, they should be decentralized. How can one ensure that one, as an executive assistant, facilitates such decisions? And then questions related to the journey of becoming more agile. Question 1, as the organization makes a shift to being more agile, everyone's role changes. What do you believe, she asks, is the most significant shift going to look like for the executive assistant role? Secondly, Carol Ann asks, a key determinant of success in being agile and improving agility is to be true to priorities, i.e., to focus on the highest priority items first. What would the top priority shifts be, in Heather's view, regarding the required change in behavior or the uptake of skills for success in the future? Third question. I've heard that the best approach to taking people on the agile journey is meeting them where they are. In a large organization like ours, Carol Ann says, we are sure to have people operating at many different levels of agile maturity. Now, she's absolutely right, and not only in large organizations. So Carol Ann asks, how do we realistically accommodate this reality when a leader, where people in forums are at different levels of maturity, can be moved forward when they are lagging? How does one ensure one doesn't lose people along the way? Let's listen to the video.
Greetings, fellow PAs in South Africa and worldwide. I'm Carol Ann Martins, and I was a finalist in the South Africa's PA of the Year Award 2021 edition. I've invited Heather Baker Thompson to be my partner. Heather is the founder of Baker Thompson Associates and is also a TAPS certified training practitioner, holds a Manchester University Certificate of Education and a Paris Chamber of Commerce bilingual secretarial diploma. Hello, Heather. Thank you again for accepting to be interviewed. I trust you are well and ready to go through some questions where we address some issues regarding the future.
Oh, definitely, Carol-Anne. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Great, let's dive in. My first focus is on whether the future PA remains a gatekeeper or facilitator. My question is quite tough, here goes. The notion of servant leadership is usually embraced as one of the ingredients of success in the shift to being more agile, and this mindset is expected of everyone. However, we also know some of the best executive assistants are known for adopting a no-nonsense approach. What is your view of how we strike a balance of these two potential opposing styles?
My belief, Carol-Anne, is that an exceptional assistant is an emotionally intelligent leader. They work with their managers for the success of the organisation. The assistant and the manager do the same job. They have the same objectives. They simply carry out different tasks to achieve those objectives. So that old-fashioned idea of the dragon at the gate, and you hear people say, oh, it's the dragon then. You think, no, this is, I am an equal colleague. It's quite rude and very patronizing, I think, to have that. The assistant should be a facilitator. We shouldn't be, obviously we've got to protect the manager. If assistants are working as an equal with their managers, making people feel valued, building relationships, then that's how they can really work and protect their manager rather than being the dragon at the gate. So when we say, how do you balance these two potentially opposing styles, I think it should really be a team, two equal parties working together to achieve the objectives for the success of the organization.
So basically what you're saying, like in our environment, we have a CIO. And of course, he's got his list of KPIs. And all of us from the bottom are then striving to make sure that he achieves his KPIs and us as a complete team.
Mm-hmm. They are yours as well. There are so many assistants who don't know their manager's objectives. So part of this being agile is, find out what your manager's objectives are because they're yours. Some managers can be quite secretive. They're actually harming their own effectiveness by not sharing that information with their assistants.
A key pillar of being agile suggests wherever possible decision-making be decentralized. I follow then that when decisions are expected from our senior leaders, it is imperative that these decisions are made quickly and efficiently. So Heather, is the next question. How can I ensure that I take up my role as an effective executive assistant to facilitate such decisions needed from the executives I work with?
Business acumen and knowledge. You can never know too much. And we don't know everything. It's so important. So again, you've got to understand what's going on in the business. So talking to people, talking to your manager, talking to colleagues, maybe reading documents. Some of your business may be in the media, maybe TV, radio, newspapers and so on. So really keeping yourself informed to develop your business acumen and keeping your ears and eyes open as well as to what's going on. Because the more knowledge you have, the more you're able to help your manager make decisions, the more you can make decisions. Also, the more you can prioritize these decisions without having to say to your manager, which is the most important. I remember one of the first things my MD asked me to do when I started working with him was to have lunch with his directors, because he wanted me to understand what they did, how they worked together, and to build those relationships with people that I was working with. He basically saw me as part of his management team. So basically he trained me to be the assistant that he wanted. I remember once taking my meeting with my manager out of the diary because he had so many people to speak to. And he came to me and said, Heather, why have we not had our meeting? I said, well, you had so many people to speak to and so on. And he just said, Heather said, never take yourself out of the diary. You are the most important person I speak to. I had to make decisions for him. The only way I could do that was by speaking to him. If your manager says they're too busy to speak to you, your reply should be, maybe you're too busy because you're not speaking to me.
I hear you. Yes, my next focus is on our journey to the Agile of work. So, as organizations worldwide make a shift to becoming more agile, it clearly means all of us will have a role change to some degree. New ways of work means starting new things, stopping other things, and doing something differently. Heather, what do you believe the most significant shifts and changes look like for the executive assistant role?
The role is changing a lot. I believe an exceptional assistant is an emotionally intelligent leader. So it's taking up those leadership skills and qualities, but also leading the changes as well. But I think also one of the things that we have to think of as assistants is we have to take ourselves seriously. We are not just an assistant. Never use that word just to define your role or your job title. And also the perceptions of who we are. There have sadly been over the years very negative perceptions of the assistant's role. Unfortunately, some people sometimes reinforce those negative perceptions with their behaviour.
Yes.
So if it's that transactional analysis thing, that if people treat you like a child, you'll act like a child. And what we have to do is act like an adult and speak like an adult, so that we are encouraging much more positive perceptions of who we are. You are an extension of your manager, you work with your manager, and I think that, sort of changing from being just an assistant to being a leader with a voice is probably the big changes that need to happen in the role. But we have to behave in a way to ensure that happens.
Yes, indeed. In your view, Heather, what would the top priority shifts be regarding the required change in behavior or uptake of skills of successful executive assistants of the future?
Yes, I think a lot of the traditional skills are still needed. Of course, the technology skills now are very important. But there's been a lot on social media about what skills are going to be required over the coming years. And I think the assistants really need to keep on top of this. So upskilling to make sure that we are really keeping up with what's required. And I think some of them are things like the emotional intelligence skills, because of this relationship building, confidence skills, leadership skills, as well. Critical thinking is another one that people are saying this is going to be really important. Be prepared to change. Change is scary.
Okay, awesome. I've heard that the best approach to taking people on the Agile journey is meeting them where they are at. In a large organization like ours, we are sure to have people operating at many different levels of Agile maturity. How do we realistically accommodate this reality when my leader or I engage with forums where people in the forum are at different levels of maturity? Do we move at the pace of those that are leading or those that are lagging?
Oh, yes, that's a good question. Never lower your standards, I say. Set an example. Take into account that other people are maybe not as far and feel uncomfortable about it. You can't go in very gung-ho and say, this is great, this is what we're doing. We've got to appreciate, and again, that's the emotional intelligence, appreciating how other people feel. But I think, training, giving people objectives, of what to achieve, but also tell them what's in it for them. What's in it for me? How will you benefit? How will this new way of working benefit you personally? Or how will it benefit the organization? And if it benefits the organization, then it benefits each individual, because it keeps going. Maybe incentives, bonuses, things to encourage people to work differently. Because if you force people to change, they don't like that. Whereas if you persuade them, sort of say to people, look how this will benefit us. Won't this be marvelous? And this sort of thing. And then, what do you think we should do? Get people to suggest things. How do you think we could do it differently? What are your thoughts? They may have some really good ideas.
Agreed, thanks. Okay. How do we ensure we don't lose people on this trend of agility? How do we ensure we stay on board by understanding the new way of work? Do we look at methods, enabling tools, terminology?
Yes, we need to look at methods, tools, terminology, all those things that you talked about. But absolutely, but while being aware of people's fears, anxieties, and so on. So if we're going to cause some change, then it needs to be in an encouraging environment. It's saying to people, this is going to be great. We want to do this because it'll really help the business. It'll really help us work better. It's actually empowering people, because they're given more rein, a bit more freedom to work independently as well. Feedback is a hugely important part on this as well. Telling people how they're doing. If there's things that are not going well, it's not criticism, it's really positive feedback. We also need to trust people to do the work. I think saying you've got to be at your desk from 9 till 5, otherwise you're not doing your job, is not true. And then one of the things I think with the remote working is that sometimes people thought, well, I'd like to work 10 till 6. And honestly, as long as you're getting the work done, surely that's the most important. Obviously, getting people in the office enhances the relationships part. So when you're working, you do have that. So yeah, we've seen the best and the worst of remote working. And I think we need to take the best of both situations and find a happy medium.
Okay, perfect. It is said that agile leadership is not only about driving the change, it is also about being the change. In my role as an executive assistant, I am effectively an extension of the executive leaders that I work closely with. So, what are your expectations of how I should be equipping myself to take up this role appropriately, and what other guidance do you have about this dynamic insofar as it may influence my role?
Tell your manager how you can make their life easier and how this will enable them to achieve their objectives for the success of the organisation. Get on committees. The committees who organise the change very rarely sack themselves. So maybe get on the committee, offer suggestions. You are driving that change rather than just sitting back, finding opportunities to share your insights. So have confidence to know that you are not just the assistant and you can't speak. Of course you can speak. What we don't want is the environment where managers think they know everything and the assistants don't. Your knowledge of the organisation can really lead to some meaningful outcomes. You can support people a lot further as well and help people to be more supportive, reflecting on where the team's up to, why are things going wrong, what can you do to put this right.
Thank you, Eva. It has been a privilege talking to you.
So I hope you enjoyed that. And summing up, this is what we say. As the march to digitization progresses, there continues to be endless predictions around the impact of AI in terms of machine learning, robotics, and your role as a PAEA. The pace of the current wave of change, you will agree, is unprecedented. You need to watch out for the implications of a continuous delivery of new tools and technologies and absolutely stay abreast of these. The question then would be, how does one secure our role in the future? So note this, not being able to do something because it isn't in the job description will be a thing of the past. You need to be absolutely flexible, versatile, and obviously adaptable. And adaptability doesn't mean flexibility. It is not synonymous. It's something quite different. To be truly agile, you need to be slightly psychic. Don't worry, you won't need superpowers. You just need to be tuned into what's happening around you. Be ready to change. And due to the speed of everything, note that job titles will eventually be replaced by mission titles or purpose of your role. This is absolutely important for you to focus on, the purpose of your role. Thank you again for listening to episode 3 of the series. We hope the journey so far has been stimulating, an eye-opener, and do stay with us as we go to part 2 of this series. Episodes 4 and episodes 5 in part 2, they will focus on the why of a PA, the issue of purpose, and as I said earlier, critical for all EAs all over the world, whether in large organizations or small organizations, whether in urban areas or rural areas, whether in the private sector or public sector. The purpose that you fulfill is ultimately the most important determinant of what your skills need to be for every particular job that you are in. Episode 5, the why of a PA in terms of how it is a critical role and not just a secondary role. In the past, PAs were assistants and therefore secondary and not viewed as critical. This mindset needs to change. I say goodbye for now and hope to see you soon as you tune in to part 2. Thanks very much. Stay well.